You've been to Kenya many times since we last went there together. You can just speak to why Kenya has become so addictive to you.
Wow, Simon. Addictive is such a great word to use. Yeah. No, actually, I am. I am not in Kenya today. I am back home. I am back in Charleston, South Carolina. I actually arrived from Kenya, from Nairobi on Saturday. So I am back in the United States. I've gained about 5-6 pounds. But I wish my heart is still in Kenya where I left. But to speak about the trip, my first time going to Kenya, Nairobi, was actually last year. I believe that was last year. It was a trip I went with three of my friends. Actually, two of my friends went. And it was a very interesting trip. I would have to say it was my first time ever in Africa, my first time ever in Nairobi, my first time ever in Kenya. And one thing I would have to say is the trip I had was probably very different from the trip that my friends had. I have to say that the thing about going to a place like Kenya is if you really want to have a really good experience, you have to go with someone who is a local. If you do not go with a local, you won't have the experience you have will be very much lacking. I think the first time I went, my friend, me and my friends, we actually planned the trip. But when you plan a trip, it's a lot of times you're just going off what you see on TripAdvisor, what you see on Instagram, what you find on Google to do. So that's kind of how we planned the trip. But what made my trip so much special, so much different, is I actually was able to connect with Simon on my trip. I was actually able to connect with Simon and also Lavinda on my trip, and it actually gave me a totally different experience than what my friends had. And that's probably the reason why I keep on going back, is because of the experience I had with Lavinda and Simon going to Kisumu and all the other places that we went. I was not really ready for the experience in a good way. It was just such a experience that was so in depth. It was very cultural. I learned so much about Kenyans, and I was able to see the similarities between Black Americans and Africans. I was able to learn so much about Kenyans. One thing I learned that I never knew was how most Kenyans actually can speak about 3 languages. Most Kenyans can speak English. They got Swahili as their main language, and they also have that native language from their tribe that they come from. So it's just so many things that open your eyes to what culture really is. And it was just, the experience was just, it was it's still an experience where I can't even put it into words. It was just so much that I was able to learn, and so many different people. It's the people that actually make the trip special. You're not gonna really have a great trip if you don't have the right people around you. Like some people say, someone could say that they visit New York City, and they may have went to the Statue of Liberty. They may have seen Times Center with all the lights. But if you have never been to Harlem, you've never really been to New York City. If you haven't been to Brooklyn or Cuzco Street, or you've never been in Flatbush, Eastern Parkway, if you never visited those places, you can't really say how the place really works. So it's kind of the same thing, So anyone who has the opportunity to take this trip, I really think that you should do it. But if you're not ready to be totally changed, then maybe it might not be for you. But if you should be ready to experience something that you weren't really thinking that you would experience in a good way. So I would say that about my trips to Nairobi. I think I've been to Nairobi Kenya. I've been there maybe about 5 times in the last 12 months. So it's definitely a place that is very hard to leave once you actually get there and you're immersed inside the culture. You definitely feel at home, especially if you're a Black African from the South, or if you're from a rural area. You have those type of traditions and vibes about you. it's definitely something that you won't forget. And so I would say that as far as the proverb really took me back because I really didn't know what it meant. But I really do agree with the what I've heard so far in reference to the proverb, and I think it does. I really agree with what Stella said, and I think I would yield at that and saying that I totally agree with how Stella took the proverb, and I think that's how I feel about the proverb as well. Thank you, Simon, for the time.
Excellent, man. You said so much that I feel like, I don't know what to say in terms of just thanking you for everything.